Hello, CHistrue here, and I couldn't let the death of Neil Armstrong go unnoticed. You know, my feelings are very, very complex. You know, we have the death of a hero who was an explorer who never took land. He didn't vanquish the natives. No one was forcibly converted. He landed on a rock and played golf. He took samples. He explored. He engaged in the scientific method, planted a flag, yes, that's true, but really when you get right down to it, all of humankind was behind him. Every nation, I mean, even the Russians begrudgingly congratulated the United States. The hope was not of national conquest, but it was of world peace. And as I look at that moment in history decades later, we realize how much of a different time it really was. Heroism carried weight. Today, heroism is being cut down all the time. Oh, he didn't really bicycle, he did steroids. You know, he so-and-so isn't really a hero. Let's cut them down. Let's reevaluate their historical memory. Let's get the historical revisionists in there to cut them down. You know, it was a different time in those days. Anyway, in this video I'm going to maybe address a number of the critics of the space program. I think there are different philosophies that take aim at the space program, and I want to try to shed some of my thoughts on them. For one thing, there are segments of the environmental movement that have made some good points. You know, the space program is a triumph of the technocratic meme. Now, there are segments of the environmental movement that are way, way out of the mainstream, where they criticize all civilization itself past the hunter-gatherer stage. They want to bring us back to the hunter-gatherer period, and they will often criticize the space program as being, again, a triumph of the technocratic meme, which in a way it is. I can agree with them on that. But and you know, we've explored some of their ideas, like, I don't know, John Zerzan and the kind of anti-civilization people. We've explored some of their ideas on this channel before, and I've thought about them. And while I realize that they make a lot of valid points, I also believe that it's not realistic that we're going to go back to the hunter-gatherer period. I just don't think that that's possible. And you know, if you really look at it, based on their own arguments, it wasn't the space program that ended our oneness with nature. It was the plow. And that's long, long ago. If anything, the space program, in bringing us back a picture of the Earth, the blue and white sphere of the Earth, reminded us that we live on a living planet. It reminded us that we live in a living system. So if anything, a lot of the segments, the more mainstream segments of the environmental movement, praised the space program. And a lot of the astronauts themselves were environmentalists. They spoke out in favor of the need to save the planet. So it's not, you know, there are legitimate criticisms of let's say, human technological hubris. But I think the space program, in a way, breaks with the mold on that. The space program has led us to a whole Earth view of the planet. Now, I agree with a lot of their criticisms on GMOs and a lot of their criticisms of transhumanism and a lot of their criticisms of the corporatization of science. I mean, we'll agree on those points. But I think that any kind of extremism divides the world into this is good and this is bad. And, you know, in a way that takes us before that iconic view of the Earth where we live on one planet. We're not a planet divided up into we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. I mean, we're all on the same team now because we all have the power to do tremendous damage to the environment. So while I agree with, I am an environmentalist, I still support the idea of the civilian space program. Now, there's another group of people whose arguments I think also have some points to them, and that's the people who oppose the militarization of space. But remember, guys, the NASA is a civilian space agency, and NASA represented the nations coming together and cooperating. It represented when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. He said, "One small step for a man," or maybe he flubbed the line. I don't know, but you know, it's he was trying to say one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. That's what he was trying to say. Maybe he flubbed it, but really, if you think back, those of you who are old enough to remember, the thoughts and the hopes of all of humanity were focused on this. It wasn't militarization. Now, there is the militarization of space, and I believe that actually, sadly, might well increase now that the civilian aspect of the space program is receding. That and the corporatization of space. So the Obama program, where we get a bunch of Russian billionaires involved in privatizing space, I mean, I don't know. I think that the old NASA was, you felt like it was your space program. Now it's the space program that's been outsourced. So while I acknowledge some of those criticisms, I think they apply more to the space program of today than to those days. Now, there's a third group of people who don't consider Neil Armstrong a hero, sadly, and those are the people who think that we didn't really land on the moon, that it was all fake and that it was all nonsense. And I can't prove that we landed on the moon. I mean, I can't prove that. But I can address, thanks to Phil Plait and other sources, I can address some of their arguments. And I credit Phil Plait with, he gave a talk at my astronomy club, and I credit him for him, not me. So if I flub it, go to him and to get the straight story. But this is based on my understanding, and they're very simple arguments. For one thing, the business with the flag, that had to be wind, waving the flag. Well, think about it now. If they're going to bring a flag to the moon, they're going to bring it looking like it's been waved, right? And that's common sense, that they're going to make it look realistic. So I don't even give that any credence. Now, the business about the shadows, where people claim that because there's a shadow here and then a shadow, two objects, and they look like the light spreading out in different directions, therefore there has to be a light source right behind and not the sun. Okay, go out to two trees outside in the sun, you'll see the same thing. You'll see shadows that do not look parallel. That is a matter of perspective. I mean, you go to a photography expert to find out about that. You can go outside and see that, or you can see it sometimes with a fence, where you have like a barbed wire fence, you have two posts of it, and the shadows of the two posts will not look parallel. So that's a matter of perspective. Like, the photography experts will understand that better, but that's clearly consistent with the sun and not with a light source. In fact, I would imagine, and my guess would be, that if there was a light source right behind them, the shadows would look frayed and not crystal clear shadows like you saw. But that's my guess. Okay, and then the business about how they would see stars out there. Well, you'd only see stars, you look at the pictures and you just see the black of space and not stars. Well, guys, you only see stars if your photography exposure time is a long time. You're not going to see stars. I'm familiar roughly with astrophotography. I'm not an expert in it, but I know something about it. And you have to have that camera out there exposed for at least 10 minutes or longer, sometimes hours, to get the stars. You will not get, and you'll have a clock drive, okay, to follow the stars. You will not get them in just a few minutes' time. So those are just a few claims that the moon hoax people make that are just total nonsense. And as far as Neil Armstrong not swearing an oath on the Bible, I would have taken something and knocked Bart Sibrel over the head personally, but that's me, okay? Neil Armstrong played that a lot cooler. Anyways, to wrap it up, we have the death of a great hero. All heroes maybe have their flaws, but I think that he should be remembered for the good things and for the fact that in staring back at the Earth from the moon, we saw a whole Earth. And maybe our future lies in space, or maybe the radical environmentalists are right, maybe it doesn't. But either way, we at least glimpsed the Earth whole. And that was a historic first. That would never have happened had John Glenn not been in orbit and had the space program never gotten off the ground. Thank you.